The first time I met Nathaniel, he was 7 years old with scraped knees and a smile that could melt butter. That was 43 years ago, back when my daughter Christine brought him home from the neighborhood playground, declaring that her new friend didn't have anywhere to go after school because his mama worked 2 jobs and his daddy was gone somewhere far away. I was 52 then, still young enough to chase after grandchildren but old enough to recognize a child who needed steadiness. My own kids were grown. My husband Bernard had been gone 3 years from a heart that gave out too soon, and my house on Maple Street felt too quiet most days. So when Christine asked if Nathaniel could stay for dinner, I said yes. When she asked if he could come back tomorrow, I said yes again, pretty soon. Yes became every day. Nathaniel's mother, Gloria, worked the morning shift at the packaging plant and the evening shift cleaning offices downtown. She'd drop him at school before dawn and wouldn't be home until almost 10 at night. The boy was raising himself essentially, with nothing but cereal for breakfast and whatever he could scrounge from the corner store for lunch. I couldn't stand it, so I started packing him lunches. Then I started picking him up from school. Then he was doing his homework at my kitchen table while I made pot roast or fried chicken or whatever I had the energy for that day. Gloria would pick him up around 10:30. Her eyes so tired they looked bruised, and she'd thank me with a voice that shook with gratitude. "You don't know what this means," she'd say. "You just don't know." But I did know. I knew what it meant to struggle, to work yourself to the bone and still wonder if it was enough. My own mama had done the same, raising 5 of us after Daddy died in the mill accident. I knew what it looked like when a woman was drowning. And I knew how much one hand reaching out could mean. So I kept reaching. By the time Nathaniel was 10, he was calling me Miss Lorraine, always respectful, always polite. By 12, he'd shortened it to just Lorraine, said with the easy affection of someone who'd forgotten I wasn't actually his grandmother. By 15, after Gloria died suddenly from an aneurysm nobody saw coming, he moved into my spare bedroom officially, and I became his legal guardian. The state made it official with paperwork, but our hearts had made it real years before. He was a good kid. Lord, he was such a good kid. He got good grades, stayed out of trouble, played basketball at the community center, and helped me around the house without being asked. He'd mow the lawn every Saturday morning, then come inside smelling like cut grass and summertime, and I'd have lemonade waiting for him on the porch. "You're going to make something of yourself," I'd tell him, watching him gulp down that lemonade like he'd been crossing a desert. "You've got something special in you, Nathaniel. I can feel it." He'd just grin at me, that same grin from when he was 7, and say, "Only 'cause you believed it first, Lorraine. Those were golden years." Even though money was tight and my arthritis was starting to make itself known in my knees and hands, I was living on Bernard's pension and my own small social security check, but we made it work. Nathaniel got a part-time job at the grocery store when he turned 16, and he'd try to give me money for rent. I never took it. "You save that for college," I'd tell him. "You're going to college, and you're going to need every penny." He did go to college too. Got a partial scholarship to the state university, studied business, and came home every other weekend to check on me, bring me groceries, fix whatever was broken. He graduated with honors, and I sat in that auditorium with tears streaming down my face, watching him walk across that stage in his cap and gown. He found me afterward in the crowd, picked me up in a hug that lifted me clean off my feet despite my protests, and whispered in my ear, "I did it, Lorraine. We did it." "No, baby," I said, cupping his face in my hands. "You did it. All you." But that wasn't true, and we both knew it. We'd done it together, him and me, through every homework assignment, every scholarship application, every moment of doubt. I'd been his foundation, and he'd been my purpose. After college, Nathaniel got a job at a real estate investment firm downtown. He moved into an apartment closer to work, but he still came by every Sunday for dinner. He'd tell me about his week, about the deals he was working on, about his boss who was teaching him the business from the inside out. "I'm learning so much," he'd say, his eyes bright with ambition. "Real estate, Lorraine, that's where the real money is. Property, land, things that last." I was proud of him, proud of his success, his drive, his determination to make something of himself. He started dressing in sharp suits, carrying a leather briefcase, talking about investments and equity and market trends I didn't always understand. But he was still my Nathaniel. Still called me every Wednesday evening just to check in. Still showed up with flowers on my birthday. When he told me he was getting married, I cried happy tears. Her name was Vanessa, a corporate lawyer with a sleek bob and designer clothes who smiled with all her teeth but never quite with her eyes. I tried to like her. I really did. But something about the way she looked at my house, at my worn furniture and outdated wallpaper, made me feel small. Still, Nathaniel loved her, so I loved her too. Or at least I tried. They got married in a fancy hotel ballroom with 200 guests I didn't know. I wore my best dress, the navy one with the pearl buttons, and sat in the front row, watching my boy promise forever to a woman who'd already started calling him Nathan instead of Nathaniel. I should have paid attention to that. The years started moving faster after that. I was in my 70s now, and time had a way of slipping through my fingers like water. Nathaniel and Vanessa bought a big house in the suburbs, had 2 kids, a boy and a girl, who I saw maybe 3 times a year if I was lucky. The Sunday dinners became monthly, then sporadic, then almost non-existent. "We're just so busy," Nathaniel would say when he called to cancel. "Work is crazy right now. The kids have activities. Vanessa's got a case. You understand, right?" I always said I understood, but understanding didn't make the silence any easier. My house on Maple Street started showing its age, same as me. The roof leaked in heavy rain. The furnace wheezed through winters. The porch steps sagged in the middle. I did what I could with what I had, but my pension only stretched so far, and I'd already dipped into my small savings more times than I wanted to admit. Nathaniel noticed during one of his rare visits. "Lorraine, this place is falling apart," he said, looking around with what I thought was concern. "You can't keep living like this. It's not safe." "It's my home," I said quietly. "I've lived here for 47 years. Bernard and I bought it together." "You grew up here." "I know," he said, and his voice softened. "I know, but maybe it's time to think about other options. Assisted living, maybe. Someplace where you'd be taken care of." The phrase assisted living landed in my chest like a stone. "I don't need to be taken care of," I said, hearing the defensiveness in my own voice. "I'm doing just fine." He didn't push it that day, just kissed my forehead and left. But I could see the wheels turning in his head, could feel the shift happening, subtle as a shadow moving across a room. A few weeks later, he came back with papers. "I've been thinking," he said, spreading documents across my kitchen table, the same table where he'd done his homework all those years ago, "about your situation, about this house. What if you signed it over to me, and I took care of all the maintenance? You could keep living here, no problem, but I'd handle all the repairs, the property taxes, everything. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing." I looked at the papers, at the legal words I didn't fully understand, then up at Nathaniel's face. He looked earnest, concerned even. "Why would I do that?" I asked. "Protection," he said. "If something happens to you, if you need medical care or have to go into a facility, Medicaid could take the house to cover costs. But if it's in my name, it's protected. You'd be protected." Something in my gut twisted, but I ignored it. This was Nathaniel, my Nathaniel, the boy I'd raised, the man I'd loved like my own blood. "I don't know," I said. "Let me think about it." "Of course," he said, gathering the papers. "Take your time. I just want what's best for you, Lorraine. You know that, right?" I nodded, because I wanted to believe it. He came back the next week, and the week after that, each time with gentle pressure, with reasons that sounded reasonable, with assurances that nothing would change except I'd have less to worry about. Vanessa came with him the 3rd time. "Lorraine," she said, her lawyer voice smooth as silk, "this is really the smart thing to do. It's estate planning, wealth preservation. People do this all the time. It's just paperwork, really. But it's my house." I said again, feeling foolish for repeating myself but unable to articulate the deeper fear gnawing at me. "And it always will be," Nathaniel said, taking my hand. "I promise. This is just to protect you, to protect what you and Bernard built. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe it was the deep, aching need to believe that the boy I'd raised would never hurt me. I signed the papers. Nathaniel hugged me, told me I'd made the right choice, promised nothing would change for a few months. Nothing did. Then the letters started coming. The first one was from a real estate agent, thanking me for my interest in selling and wanting to schedule a showing. I threw it away, thinking it was junk mail. The second one mentioned Nathaniel's name specifically, referencing his inquiry about comparable sales in the area. My hands shook as I held that letter. I called him immediately. Nathaniel, I got a strange letter from a realtor. Oh, that, he said, his voice carefully casual. I was just getting an idea of what the place might be worth. For the future, you know, estate planning. But I'm not planning on selling. I know. It's just information. Don't worry about it. But I did worry. Worry turned into a constant low hum of anxiety that lived in my chest, making it hard to sleep, hard to breathe right. The third letter came from a lawyer I'd never heard of, asking me to sign documents finalizing the property transfer. I didn't sign anything. Instead, I took the letter to legal aid downtown, to a young woman named Keisha with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She read the letter. Then she asked to see the papers I'd signed with Nathaniel. I watched her face change as she read, watched her mouth tighten into a thin line. Miss Lorraine, she said carefully, do you understand what you signed? Nathaniel said it was to protect the house. This isn't a protection trust. This is a full transfer of ownership. You don't own this house anymore. He does. The room tilted. But he said I could keep living here. He promised. Keisha's expression was gentle but grave. There's nothing in these documents that says that. Nothing legally binding anyway. He owns the house. He can do whatever he wants with it, including selling it. No, I whispered. No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't do that to me. I'm sorry. But based on these realty letters, it looks like that's exactly what he's planning to do. I don't remember driving home. Don't remember walking from my car to my house. The house that wasn't mine anymore. The house I'd lived in for 47 years. The house where I'd raised my children and buried my grief and loved a little boy who'd needed me. I sat at my kitchen table and cried until I had no tears left. When Nathaniel came by 2 days later, unannounced, I was ready. We need to talk, I said before he could even sit down. Sure. What's up? He had that easy confidence, that charming smile, but I could see through it now, could see the calculation behind his eyes. Are you selling my house? His smile faltered for just a second. What? Where did you hear that? The letters, Nathaniel. The realtor letters. The lawyer letters. He sighed, ran a hand through his hair. Okay, look, yes. I've been exploring options, but it's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. The house is falling apart, Lorraine. You can barely afford to live here. The property taxes alone are killing you. And the value has gone up so much in this neighborhood. Do you know what this place could sell for? I don't care what it could sell for. It's my home. It's an asset, he said. And his voice had gone cold now. Businessman cold. An asset that's being wasted. We could sell it. Put you in a nice assisted living facility. Invest the rest. You'd be taken care of for the rest of your life. I don't want to be in a facility. I want to be here. You promised I could stay here. I never promised that. The words hit me like a slap. Yes, you did. You said nothing would change. You said I said a lot of things to get you to sign, okay? He was standing now, pacing, agitated. Look, I'm sorry, but this is business. Good business. The market is hot right now, and if we wait, we might miss the window. Vanessa and I have been looking at investment properties, and we need the capital. Investment properties, I repeated numbly. You need the capital. Don't act like you don't benefit from this too. You'd have a roof over your head, meals cooked for you, medical care on site. It's better than this place, honestly. I stood up, my whole body shaking. Get out. Lorraine, get out of my house. It's not your house anymore, he said quietly. It's mine. After he left, I called Keisha. I want to fight this. I told her, I don't care what it takes. I want to fight. She was quiet for a moment. Miss Lorraine, I'm going to be honest with you. The law isn't on your side here. You signed over the property. It's a valid transfer. He tricked me. That's hard to prove. You signed voluntarily. There's no evidence of coercion or fraud, not legally speaking. So that's it. He just gets to take everything? There might be one angle, she said slowly. If we can prove he had no intention of protecting you, that the whole thing was a scheme to get the property from the beginning, we might be able to argue fraud or undue influence. But we'd need evidence. Communications, messages, anything that shows his real intentions. I thought about Sunday dinners, about scraped knees and homework help, about a little boy who called me every Wednesday. I'll find something, I said. I started with the obvious places. Old emails, text messages, voicemails. But Nathaniel had been careful, always talking about protection and what's best in writing. Anything incriminating had been said out loud, in my kitchen, with no witnesses. I was about to give up when I remembered something. Nathaniel had left his old laptop at my house years ago. Said he'd pick it up eventually and never did. It had been sitting in my closet, forgotten, for at least 5 years. I pulled it out, blew off the dust, and prayed it still worked. It did, and it was still logged into his old email account. I know it was wrong to look. I know it was an invasion of privacy. But he'd invaded my life, my trust, my home. So I looked. What I found made me physically sick. Emails between Nathaniel and Vanessa, dating back to years, talking about getting the house and the old lady won't last much longer anyway. Messages to real estate agents from 18 months ago, long before he ever approached me with those papers. Discussions about my declining mental state and how that would make it easier to argue I wasn't competent to make decisions. He'd been planning this for years. And there was more. Messages to his boss, talking about leveraging family assets for a promotion. Notes about how much the house was worth, what they could buy with the profit, how this was finally paying off after all those years of playing the dutiful son. Playing. That's what I'd been to him. A role he'd played, an investment he'd made, waiting for the return. I printed everything. Every email, every message, every piece of evidence of his betrayal. My hands shook so hard I could barely load the paper in the printer. Keisha reviewed everything with eyes that got wider with each page. This is it, she said. This is exactly what we need. This proves fraud, proves he never intended to protect you, proves the whole thing was a scheme. We can take this to court. How long will it take? Months probably, maybe longer. And Miss Lorraine, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to get ugly. He's not going to go down without a fight, neither am I said. The court battle was everything Keisha warned it would be and worse. Nathaniel hired expensive lawyers who painted me as a confused old woman, mentally declining, unable to manage my own affairs. They brought up my age, my arthritis, even the fact that I'd once forgotten to pay a utility bill on time. But we had the emails. The courtroom was cold, and too bright. I sat in my navy dress with the pearl buttons, the same one I'd worn to his wedding, and watched a man I'd raised try to destroy me. His lawyers argued that the emails were taken without permission, that they were old, that they didn't reflect his current intentions. Nathaniel himself took the stand and said he'd been frustrated when he wrote those things, that he'd been under stress, that he loved me and only wanted what was best. I did this to protect her, he said, looking right at the judge. She's like a mother to me. I had to grip the edge of my seat to keep from standing up and screaming when it was my turn to testify. I told the truth. All of it. From the 7-year-old boy with scraped knees to the man who'd promised nothing would change. I told them about the homework help and the Sunday dinners and the way he used to call every Wednesday just to check in. I loved him, I said, my voice breaking. I loved him like he was my own blood. And he used that against me. The judge, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes, listened to everything. She read every email, reviewed every document, asked pointed questions that Nathaniel's lawyers stumbled over. Then she made her ruling. I find sufficient evidence of fraud and undue influence, she said, her voice carrying through the courtroom. The property transfer is hereby voided and the house is returned to Miss Lorraine Mitchell. Furthermore, Mr. Cole is ordered to pay all legal fees and court costs associated with this case. I heard the words, but they didn't feel real. Additionally, the judge continued, looking directly at Nathaniel, I want to say that in my 30 years on the bench, I have rarely seen such a calculated betrayal of trust. You took advantage of someone who loved you, who raised you, who gave you opportunities you wouldn't have had otherwise. That's not just legally wrong. It's morally reprehensible. Nathaniel's face was white, his jaw tight. This court is adjourned. Outside, Keisha hugged me while I cried, relief and grief mixing together until I couldn't tell the difference. You won, she said. The house is yours again. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like losing everything that mattered. I haven't seen Nathaniel since the trial. He never called, never came by, never apologized. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that he and Vanessa moved out of state, took the kids, started over somewhere fresh where nobody knew what he'd done. I'm 95 now. The house on Maple Street is still mine, though I know my time in it is limited. My body is giving out, piece by piece, and I've made arrangements to leave the house to a local charity that helps single mothers. They'll turn it into transitional housing, a place where women like Gloria once was can find stability while they get back on their feet. I think about Nathaniel sometimes, especially on Wednesdays when the phone doesn't ring. I wonder if he ever thinks about me, if he ever regrets what he did, if those Sunday dinners mean anything to him now or if they were always just part of the investment strategy. I wonder if he tells his kids about the old woman who raised him, or if he's erased me from his history entirely. But mostly, I think about the lesson I learned too late. That love, real love, doesn't have a price tag. It doesn't wait for return on investment. It doesn't calculate worth or measure value. Real love just loves, with no expectation of getting anything back. I gave that kind of love to Nathaniel. Pure, unconditional, no strings attached love. He never learned to give it back. And that, more than the house, more than the betrayal, more than the court battle, is the saddest part of this whole story. Because in the end, I didn't lose a house. I lost a son, and he lost so much more than that.